Hello, my name is Paul Hoffman and I am a manager for Hitachi Consulting, and today we're going to be showing you how to deploy an Azure resource, specifically an Azure Virtual Machine in Azure with a JSON template and PowerShell. And then we're going to show how you could take that script in Visual Studio and export it and actually import it into Azure and deploy systems with code. So without further ado, let's just talk about what you need for this. For the solution, you're going to need to have Visual Studio 2013 or 2015 installed, the latest Azure SDK. You're going to have an Azure subscription, and that's all you need. In this demo is we're going to show you how to deliver the VM in Azure with Visual Studio, and then how we could take that JSON script and PowerShell, and we can actually, even without the PowerShell, we can just take that, cut and paste it into template delivery in Azure, and away you go. What's important to note is that this delivery is what we call Azure Resource Manager delivery. It doesn't work with the older Azure portal. So it's all for the new portal. So let's get started. Here we have our Microsoft Azure, but before we go there, first thing we want to do is deploy from Microsoft Visual Studio, and we're going to go File, and we're going to go New, Project. As you can see, this Azure Resource Group here. Sometimes it'll say C# over here, or it'll say Visual Basic. It doesn't matter which one it says. Ours says C#. We're going to go with that. We're going to say OK. It's going to be, we're going to call this one here Azure Group 5. You can call it anything you want, though. It's basically a collection of the JSON file, the parameters, and a little bit of PowerShell. You'll see that in a second. Okay, so as you can see, there's all these different choices what we can do for deployment, but for today's demo, we're going to be doing the Microsoft Virtual Machine. And we can see the output window here, but we really need to see the Solution Explorer. So if it's not open in your Visual Studio, open that and drag that window over here. And you'll see there's a few things in here. One's a PowerShell script to deploy the JSON template up to Azure, and the two JSON templates that you have here is the actual JSON template itself and the parameters file. And this is all human readable. You can, we're going to have a little GUI interface to deploy this, but you can just change this, these parameter files, and put in your own parameters, say disk or network card or public IP address or anything right in the code, and or the script, and deploy that. But today we're going to just do it the easiest way possible, and that's just to go up here and right click on this and say deploy on the top of the tree here, new deployment. And of course it's going to have to log into your subscription. That's one of the requirements. It's looking for my subscription right now. You can see that I'm logged in here, and it's found it. Should do the same for you. And as stated, this has to be a resource group deployment. So you have to have a resource group created. There are scripts you can where it will create it new for you, but this one's asking for it. So I'm going to do this Paul Test 1 group, and that's it. I'm just going to say deploy. Okay, of course, well, one last thing, it's going to ask for an admin username and also an admin password that is hashed. And right now in the background, it's filling in that JSON script file. And the DNS name for public IP, make sure that's unique. That looks good. Okay, and there'll be one little window come up here in PowerShell here in a second, asking for the admin password. So we're going to have to type that in. Obviously, it needs to log in to Azure to deploy that template, and then just press enter. And you can see down here in the output window down at the bottom that it started the deployment. provisioning status is running. And you can see that it's created my public IP. You can call that anything you want, and it's also creating the network security group, the virtual network, and the NIC right now, and that's all happening in the background. And of course, these names can all be changed to whatever you want. The storage account that it's creating right now is just a standard storage account with net new, but that can also be an existing storage account. And it says provisioning status is succeeded. So let's go switch over to our portal. Go to the resource group for Paul Test 1. Okay, and there is the system. It's called My Windows VM and My VM NIC and My Public IP. So these are all created. If you want to try and log into the machine, just go right here. Say connect. Give it a second here. If this doesn't connect right now, it's probably because the system is actually still being created and updating. So I might have done this a little too soon, and I have. So while that's creating, let's go and show how we can do this. Take the script that was created in Visual Studio and deploy the script. Okay, I'm going to go out to the home. I've already pasted the template deployment here. If you need to find this, all you need to do is go into New and search and find template deployment. And we'll click on that. And we'll go back to our Visual Studio. And the part we want is the actual JSON file that's already been populated. So we'll just go here and we'll do a Control A and Control C. And we'll come back over here to our template deployment and say create. Okay, and of course we've got to paste in the template. So let's delete all this stuff that comes with it. Make sure everything's gone. And paste our template. And then save that. Now we got to edit our parameters, and these are in the parameter files in the Visual Studio, but here we have to plug those in. The script is asking for these parameters. Now if you added in one parameter, say for disk and or network security group or whatever you want to do, you can add that into the script and it'll show up here in the GUI. But this is what the choices that we have here. So once again, admin username. Public IP. And just like we showed you in the Visual Studio with the three choices we have, and I could show you that in the JSON file as soon as we're done here, that there are three choices. You can add more, but we're going to do the data center. Say OK. And then it sees our Azure subscription. I'm going to put this in another resource group. So we don't have, because we have the same name for this machine, so I can't write into the same resource group with the same name. Review the legal terms, create, and I think that's it. Actually, I think we'll be prompted one more time. And it's submitting that deployment right now. So that's one way you can do it. So you can create it in Visual Studio, change your parameters. Let's take a look at some of those parameters. Don't want to close that. Let's just maximize this. So you could see that this text has got some of the familiar things that we were looking at in the parameters file. Okay, so the variables are right here at the top. Windows Server, you can see that's called My VM NIC, but you could have changed that to anything else. You could have changed the subnet here to 192 or 172. There's my public IP. We could just change that right here and just say new public. And let's see what other thing. Let's do this thing instead of my Windows VM. Let's say call it Paul Test Demo 1. Okay, and then we can go back over here to Azure Resource Group 5 and say deploy. Say new deployment. Give it a second. Okay, we'll put this one even in another group. Let's go for this one and deploy. So now when we deploy this one, we've made a couple of changes. I've called it Paul Test Demo 1. I changed a couple other things in here also. So now we'll deploy this to this resource group. Once again, got to type in my password. Let's make sure this is unique. And this time I think I'll do 2008. And the PowerShell, it's going to prompt me because it wants to copy up the script and deploy. And we should see that deployment starting in the output window at the bottom. And there it goes. Let's double check some of those. See if it's running fine. Looks good. Let's go back to Azure and see how we're doing there. So we have our new system. It's already shown up here in the Paul Test 1. And there's the Paul Test Demo 1 that we just created. We changed the name on that, and it's that fast. Of course, it depends on the size of the machine and the resource. Let's see if we can log into this one now. Whoops, sorry, I got to click on this. And logging in. So that's deploying a Windows virtual machine, all with script, with JSON script, and with Visual Studio, and also taking that script that's in Visual Studio, just cutting and pasting it into template deployment, and away you go. Thank you for joining us today.